Hello, everybody, and welcome to ABM Answered, the quickfire demand generation ABM video series, or at least that's what we're aiming for. I'm here with Spenser, the event technologist extraordinaire at Procore Technologies. How did we even meet, Spenser? I guess would be a good intro here.
Years ago, I think years is crazy to say. Somewhere in the middle of COVID, you reached out and you said, I've got this thing I'm building. You seem like a person that does this stuff. Can you just poke around with it? And I was absolutely infatuated when I had with you and with what you had built. And the irony is I haven't once signed a contract for your product or anything, but we managed to stay in touch. So it feels like a genuine connection.
Nice. I've just outed myself there as like a spammer, aren't I? But yeah, no,
No.
actually, that rings a bell. So again, to run you through the rules and the viewers the rules, Spenser in this case will be given 7 questions to respond to, all about account-based marketing and demand generation. Within this case, specifically focusing in on events. The questions have come from or have been adapted based on the data we've collected at Mixed Reality Rooms, the tool Spenser was mentioning, shameless plug there on my own show, where over 1,000 marketers have gone through and stated what their biggest struggles are with demand gen and ABM at the moment. So, yep, Spenser, if you're ready to rock and roll, we'll dive straight into question 1.
Let's do it.
So, problem 1, or challenge 1, I guess, is low engagement rates. So I guess this was specifically focused on more like virtual events, but if you want to take more of a in-person events kind of play to it as well, of like how you spruce things up in person, how do you or your team ensure high engagement rates during kind of virtual and hybrid events, and specifically specifically kind of things that help promote meaningful interactions to understand your audience?
Yeah. Admittedly, a lot of the events that I do now are in person. The virtual ones I do in the hundreds I've done in the past. Really quick pre-event, I've worked at places where we said we're going to do a massive launch. We're going to get tons of engagement on registration. And the lesson learned there is to do multiple small launches, make sure the milestones are meaningful, and you'll see registration have a continuous thumb throughout. For virtual events during them, I think in the depths of COVID, we had to just accept that we couldn't do anything in person. So no matter what kind of virtual event it was, you felt good about it. Now it takes a lot more to keep people engaged, to even show up to a virtual event, let alone stay engaged throughout it. The number one thing is interactivity. And I found the best way to do it is having someone in the chat, or even the host calling out what people are saying in the chat. As soon as I feel like I'm seen, even though I'm not on camera, it changes everything for me. You have my attention for as long as you want it. The second bit is the ability to invite people on stage to ask questions. There's a few products that do this well, I think. I'm not affiliated with anyone I'm going to name drop, but Goldcast, for instance, I just went to an event where they had hosted this whole session on AI, and the last 20 minutes were dedicated to asking questions. And within that, instead of relying on these written out questions, they said, if we need any more context, we're going to bring you on stage. And it didn't fall flat. Everyone was eager to join and get their face out there.
Nice.
So,
And is that the same with in person as well? Like pass around, like at talks, would you like pass around the mic when people are doing speeches, or
it
really
depends. I'm such an introverted person that in person, the last thing I want to do is have any attention on me. So I think content is a much bigger lever in person to get people to actually sit down in the chairs. But once they're there, a lot of the things that keep you engaged anywhere, like having someone next to you to talk to, create camaraderie, meet new people, all those things naturally fall into place for in-person events. But to get people in the chairs, you either have to have really compelling content, or the audience has to be your peers, people you actually want to talk to. And you and I both probably go to hundreds of events that the last thing we want to do is talk to anyone that shows up to them. So
yeah.
we go there for the content, but for some events that might be a little less than flashy, we're inclined to go because of the people we'll meet there.
Okay, nice. Which to a challenge two, which ties in quite nicely with this, it was just like a follow-on question, is personalization. So, um, how when you were doing virtual events, I guess how were you kind of like personalizing that? And I'd be interested if you were personalizing it in any other way beyond kind of like the content, like if you were sending out gifts or things like that, and then also in person. Um, Again, this might be a rogue question, but are there any ways that, or like, is there any groundwork that goes into an event beforehand from like the sales team? Like, is there anything you do to entice people to rock up to your stand, kind of with a targeted approach?
Absolutely. Virtual to make it feel more personalized. Most of the emails that you get invited to events from, it's a database. There's something inside that pulls first name, last name, whatever else. It's all account-based marketing for the most part. If it feels personalized, it's account-based. The second
Mhm.
level is SDRs that or BDRs that their full-time job is to find information about people, identify if they're good leads, and make a personalized email to invite them to something. As crappy as that might sound from the outside, to receive that email with your name in it that says, I think you're interested in this because of what I've seen you do, will hook a lot of people, myself included. Um, Virtual events, it's sending gifts is a huge thing. Like I just went to an event and I received a gift from a giveaway because they incentivized me. They said ask questions, respond to polls, and you're entered into something. And as soon as I physically received that gift, I'm not going to forget it, and I'll continue to go to their events. And it's not just because of the gift; it's because I know they know who I am. um, and the second part was about how you do this in person.
Yeah, I mean, if like I can't actually think of any ways off the top of my head how you'd personalize an in-person event, I guess. But yeah.
Account-based marketing for in person is so dynamic.
Hmm.
There's there's a way to do it is if you have a product with annual contracts, you slide, and I've had people do this to me, they slide in a ticket to their conference in the contract at a massive discount. And that in and of itself is very personalized. They'll pitch it to you. And I think it's as creative as that is, I think it is a little bit creative.
Because
Um,
some of those they're not cheap. Not wait, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, they're not cheap, are they? There's some of these
no,
big flagship events.
no,
Yeah.
I think and a product I signed for a multi-year hundreds of thousands of dollar thing casually slid in like $2,000 worth of tickets. And I was like, come on, what are you doing here? But then they'd said no, because you're doing this, we want to give you a VIP package, and they laid out the whole thing, and I was like, well, this pays for itself. Like, this is a vacation I would take on my own anyways, and if I'm getting paid to do it and I'm doing it on the clock, it sounds even better.
Nice. Yeah, I
um,
guess you have to appeal, don't you, to the actual the buyer or the budget holder,
yeah,
rather than the account itself.
more on more on account-based marketing or just database, incentivizing your internal customer service and sales teams to have promotional codes that have discounts that they hand off to customers, getting them competitive to do it. As I say this out loud, I just cringe because I know it's not anything new and it sounds really weird to say. But when you do it across so many different fields of like, how can you personalize something to your existing database, executives, freemium tier accounts, premium accounts, signing contracts, all that stuff, all those interactions, you're having it over a Zoom call. They're inviting you to a special experience, and it feels personal. That, and when you show up on site, and this sounds dumb, but when you go to an event and you get your badge printed out and it has your name, your title, and all these things that are very personal to you, you're like, I belong here. It wasn't an afterthought. I'm not just showing up to some desk that has like no name badges. I'm intentionally here, and it feels good.
That I wonder if there's more to that. There probably is, and you probably know of it already. Like if you can do even more than that on your name badge,
Yeah.
like it'd require a lot of like work, I guess. But yeah, that's quite an interesting play. Challenge three was measuring ROI. So obviously things have shifted macroly, if that's a word, in recent years from like growth at all costs to profitability. But I guess I'd be interested to have you like walk me through kind of how do you justify spend for like an in-person event, and like kind of
Yeah.
what kind of returns are you looking for afterwards, and in what format?
Yeah, it just depends on what your event is trying to accomplish. I've worked, without naming any names, I've worked at two different companies that one did it 100% as a brand reach, and they don't care about their ticket sales being profitable. They don't do it for that. They do it to get their brand further out there, to create special connections. And when you look at the ROI on that, is about how many times is their logo shared across social, and they create tons of touch points too, of like, show up and take a selfie in front of our branded wall while you're doing this amazing thing on site. That it's hard to realize return on investment in that immediately, but it does always trickle back down the pipeline from contract signed because of brand affinity. Um,
Mhm.
Again, it's really hard to tie, like they posted a selfie at our event, therefore they signed a $200,000 contract. That's not how it works. But we as marketers try to latch on it and say, yeah, that's why they did it.
That was us.
Um, the other side is oh my god, I lost my train of thought. Doing ROI events, when you show up as an attendee to an ROI event, you know the difference immediately. And a lot of the times, the first thing you notice is that there are paid workshops that are very, very expensive to become certified on their products. And it works. The goal is to get people to own and adopt your product. If it's a B2B product in which you can scale it, buy your own licenses, and then farm them out for whatever profit you want, or if you sit on a team and your whole job is around doing that, selling workshops for exorbitant prices is something you can do as well. Ticket prices, they're typically more expensive. Entertainment is typically less flashy. You don't have the I don't even know. You don't have the really big brand names of like, I'll throw out like the Beyonces or whatever else for a private concert. Instead, you get I went to a show where they had Nelly perform for 400 people, and we were like, why is Nelly at a HR conference for 400 of us? And it was what you get on an ROI event is much different. That said, the business of events is a business. It's a business,
Yeah.
and there are people that host events simply to make them profitable. It's not just about, they don't have an existing brand or product. Their brand and product is the event itself.
Okay, there is a clear difference between like a brand awareness, fun, like interaction, demand kind of gen
Yeah,
event with a killer sales, like let's cut the crap, just let's go straight into it, and here's what we're all about kind of event.
yeah.
On so my this is my question. This is the first time I've ever included a host question. Yours truly. Technical issues. So again, this is probably more obviously virtual events. You've done hundreds of virtual events, but also like I've got an experience background in person events as well. Um, Run me through your process. How many times do you mentioned kind of addressing the first challenge that you'll micro launch like multiple different times. Like how many times do you test? Like how many times is it like realistic to test before an event? Yeah.
When does it bleed into anxiety
Yeah.
testing versus actually finding problems? I think I've been doing virtual events for 10, 11 years more or less, since they're like infancy to now whatever it is. And I used to test, I would come up with these massive spreadsheets that had if this happens, then this is why. And I would do all these things that you just don't know what you don't know. And I would sit there and my ego would be crushed if any small thing went wrong. And I would immediately out myself to my executives and be like, it's all my fault. I'm so sorry I did. I don't even, the bottom, what I'm trying to say is I have a level internally and written down of what is complete failure and what is artifacts or smaller issues that, yes, it doesn't look great, but it still functions and we're still getting our content out. I play through this matrix and I warn, it's been a long time since I've personally sat, operated, and owned all the equipment, all the tech, and everything else. Because of the scale of the events that I do now, it's a lot more about working with agencies that you trust that can do it for you. And I talk to them along with my internal stakeholders and I say, this is what an outage looks like for us during this event. If we have a live keynote that's being broadcast everywhere and the audio and video are out of sync by full seconds, that borderline's an outage. If everything is completely down, that's an outage. And I just go through a whole matrix of what is complete failure and what are things that we can improve upon and reiterate on the next time. And the things
Yeah.
now that, fingers crossed for upcoming events that I have, but the things now that are big issues are all things I've just never experienced before. And I'm really big on harping on my failures, but focusing on them and learning from them immediately. I think everyone that is in our space is. So a long-winded way to answer your question, you build up an emotional and pragmatic response to what is full failure and what is going to be okay, but it isn't ideal.
Awesome. So you've got thick skin. You've got your people working on it now.
I've
But
been
like
beat
to your
down.
point, it's it's good that you've got the. It's good that you've been in the trenches, so to speak, right? And like you know exactly what you're looking for, what failure points are, and events are surprising how they can like these new things, new problems just come out of thin air. Um, I
Absolutely.
would say it's one of like besides like, and I'm sure there's many other careers out there which are a lot more stressful, like being a surgeon, being in the army. But I always go like if you can be in events, like there's that hidden like I'll like nod my head to you, kind of like take my hat off to you. There's a lot of
I
stress involved with it.
I worked at a company, and I won't name them, but they did a mental health event, and one of the leaders from our company had said had prompted the event with event, event producers have jobs that are more stressful than doctors, firefighters, and police officers. And that's when I was like, that's not true. We do not. The worst we
Big
do,
claim.
yeah, they claim lives are not dependent upon what we do or don't do. And I think I'm constantly grounded in that reality. I genuinely have a threshold of how much I'll can worry about something at this point because I've gone through years of I'm not gonna sleep for days because this went bad and I have to recover from it and whatever else. I just myself and I think many others just don't have the capacity to do that anymore.
Well, it sounds like he's just trying to be relevant.
I think we agree.
Challenge 5: integrating events into the buyer's journey. So again, we spoke about ROI
Yeah.
just then, but I'm again things have shifted a bit. Are more events being run to nurture existing leads, or do people run events typically for new business? I guess it's a blended
I
answer
can
here. Isn't it?
It really depends on the type of business you have. I worked at an HR startup that had a product in which you could hire people around the world. And most of our events were around thought leadership of not even what our product does and how it does it, but you should be hiring people from around the world for diversity reasons, for equity reasons. You should be looking at second and third world countries to hire talent, and we can help you do that. It was staked in that. So those are all generating net new leads and brand awareness. Where I'm at now, while we still do the same thing, we also have tons of educational content about what our product is and how to use it. So I don't know if I could call it an even mix, but we spend tons of time looking at how can we educate current users now. And I mean, the goal is like have them be super users of our product so they have positive brand affinity with us, but also to upsell and they can see possibilities of, well, right now they have this tier account. If we show them and train them via webinars from ABM invites, then they will see what is left, see what else they could do with us, but they're not doing now.
Challenge 6 that came in was post event follow up. So I'm going to leave this open ended, not lead you anywhere with
Yeah.
this. I mean, there's a pretty bog standard routine, like follow up from SDRs and things. But have you seen anything that particularly works really well? Whether it's follow up for virtual events, follow up for in person events.
The main difference to me between in-person and virtual events, if you're strictly looking at content, is the amount of touch points you have to find interesting moments with your audience. So we have, where I am now, Procore, we host an annual user conference. There's on-site workshops, there's experiential activations, there's demo stations on site, there's dozens of sessions that take place that you can go and learn more. There's major keynotes that take place. I promise it's not a plug for my event, but all of that is to say each one of those activations that you go to is catered towards a specific kind of person or a specific kind of account, essentially. There's outside of our keynotes, there's very few broad stroke welcome to tech or anything like that. So with it, post-event follow-up, we're watching all these interactions. We're trying to understand what people enjoyed, what they were interested in at this event. And we'll follow up with them with very specific marketing materials of, we have webinars about these things that you showed interest in. We have these upcoming events that you saw interest, blogs, everything else. So we serve them these things and try to nurture that further and further. For virtual events, if it's like a 1 hour webinar and you talked about a single topic like AI, for instance, there's just not a lot you can do other than follow up with, if you enjoyed this event, look at our past events. If you want to learn more about the future of this space, here's some upcoming events that we have, or our partners, or something else.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is kind of a long-winded answer, but it's more or less to say you can create really personalized post-event follow-up comms that really pique someone's interest. The more touch points that you have, or the more moments that you can actually track of what they're doing at your events, whether they're virtual or in person.
Okay, and one little quick follow on that. Is there? So I spoke to someone. I had someone on my show that was not pro nurture sequence, and I think like what we're talking about here is like very personalized follow up, individual for each kind of
Yeah.
person.
What was their take?
But they, well, their take was, and maybe it's a bit defeatist, to be honest. I did think that, but it was more like, hey, buyers are like locked into certain, buying times of the year until their budgets unlock. They're pretty
Yeah,
useless anyway. So like, what's the point of me sending you like an automated email every like kind of 2 weeks?
totally.
Would you agree kind of with that, or?
I'd agree if you're not putting much thought into it. It really depends on how dynamic your product is. I mean, how dynamic your product is and how much the average contract size is. If you're talking about a product that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, it is worth the time to look through this person's profile and understand exactly how to pitch to them. If you're selling licenses for something that's like B2B prices, or there's not a whole lot of meat inside of there, and the labor hours you spend nurturing do not pay for themselves, then no,
Yeah.
just wait until it's Q3, wait until October, hit them with everything you got, and say, we'll make this happen by December 31st if you can.
And we'll throw in a ticket to our conference.
There you go.
Okay, fine. Final. Are you okay for time, Spencer? Sorry, I know
Yeah,
we're at your
absolutely.
final question. Cool.
Absolutely.
So the final question came in from our previous guest, Davis, and he wanted to know, how do you see the convergence? I can never say that. The convergence of demand generation and ABM taking place.
I don't even know. That sounds really jargony. I'm going to try to break it down so I don't answer this incorrectly. The convergence of account-based marketing and demand generation taking place.
So my interpretation of that is like demand gen. Everyone's got their own definition of kind of what that is. Some people would call it like, for me, I'd say it's like kind of like more paid ads, like clustering up loads and loads of accounts, and basically just kind of speaking to your audience. ABM
Yeah.
for me, like true ABM, is like very specific, kind of like one to one. But I guess it's from like, how do you go from, another way to put it, lead gen to ABM, maybe, instead of like
Yeah.
spray and pray to kind of being very targeted?
I think like a really tactical response is using a partner network or partners that you have in your ecosystem and incentivizing both ways. I think transcends both of those spaces. You're sort of working off an existing list or database because they have it, they own it, but you're cross-pollinating your own product in that. I think that's a clear example of how the two converge. Future state, I don't know. I think the biggest issue I've ever seen is working at startups that are super limited in marketing resources, and to hire a demand generation manager and a ABM manager and a marketing operations specialist and any other support is a huge consideration. They're immediately looking for ROI. And I'll answer it with I don't know, and I'm very curious to see how how it grows throughout time, and I guess how smaller teams will be able to do both
Yeah,
effectively.
definitely limited. Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess it kind of depends on how, like you were saying earlier, how expensive your product is. Like, do you even have is it worth doing ABM before doing demand generation and kind of capturing
yeah.
that market share? Great. So, Spencer, we have completed the interrogation. My last question to you is: do you have a question for our next guest?
Yeah, you talk to anyone that's in marketing as a whole, right? Or
Yeah,
more about
all sorts.
account. Okay, I know this is the title. This is ABM. Um, I've been going to a ton of AI events recently because who hasn't and whose manager isn't telling them to do it. But everything is based on content. It's based about writing content or editing videos or something like that. What I've yet to see in specifically in event marketing is um, how you can use AI to stop using so much labor for like being in spreadsheets and organizing for my own personal needs session data across multiple days and creating session tracks or even like building out good content tracks or good agendas for virtual events. I just want to know how what people are using. I guess my question is, how are people using AI and they cannot say for content?
I That's a great question, and you've also triggered my brain to go off in 1,000 different directions too. I know exactly who to ask this question to. Um, yeah, I'm interested to hear what they're going to say. Okay, awesome, Spencer. Thank you so much, and yeah, we'll chat soon.
Thank you. Appreciate this.